This little stopper plate goes in right there. Make sure this valve drops all the way back. Come on now. Drop in there. Now, I don't normally take these valve bodies apart like this. These are normally not stuck. I just take them apart, clean out, blow them out. God dang it, I had it in there. And the little keepers are going to fall out, except for this one. Usually stays in there unless you blow it really hard. So just be mindful of where the, God dog it. Come on. Be mindful of where the keepers go and don't lose them. Alright, make sure that valve's back. Then the little keeper goes right there. This one will fall out. This little valve goes with the hollow end out. Make sure that when this one falls out that this valve is all the way this way and this valve's this way, so that it goes in between the two. This little plate goes back here in the back. The little legs facing forward. This valve goes in, and the sleeve goes on top. Now there's a little bracket that holds this in. You want to make sure these flat spots are facing out. There's a little bracket that holds this in. You want to make sure that that bracket's pushed all the way up against here and is flush with this. We'll talk about that when we get there. 3/4 inch steel balls that go here, here, and here. And make sure this is 1/4 inch. And a 1/4 inch ball, rubber ball that goes right there. Okay, and on the back side, didn't talk about it, but there's an O-ring that goes right there. Make sure that gets changed. Okay, we'll be back on the next section. Okay, we got our plate here. We got our housing that's going to go on here. There's 2 bolts, 8mm that go on here. Ground wire is going to go here. I'm going to leave this loose for the momentary. We are going to move this stuff a little bit. Okay, the plate right here, this has to go up against here. It bolts onto here. So this is going to be sitting like this. And we got our bolts that hold all of this down. There's a bracket on the wires that goes on that also. So we're going to leave that off for the momentary. Okay, we have a 1/4-inch ball that goes in this hole right here. Spring sits on top. 1/4-inch ball that goes here. The filter, if we end up rebuilding this will get replaced. Usually they come in the kit. Go ahead and replace that. Alright, we got our plate and valve body here. Going this way. This bolt with the washer on it goes down inside. And then let me stick these in. And we will get the sizes. Pretty much you're just going to be sticking up just a little bit on your bolts. So it's not that big of a deal. You can't hardly screw it up. Short one goes here. Alright, got one in the wrong spot. Where are we at? Yes, it is this one. Okay, where's my calipers? We'll start with the one with the washer. Inch 785, inch 537, inch 535, inch 770, 2-inch 265, same, 1-inch 542, 1-inch 770, same, 1-inch 537, same, 1-inch 770, 952 thousandths. Alright, let's get this tightened down. And you can use lineup pins on this right in here. I have never really found the need to do that, but it is available if you want to do it. Those are a little bit small. Let's see if I got anything that is closer. It's close. Alright, those are E4OD valve body bolts that go in the case. Pretty dang close. I just usually eyeball it and that's fine. Okay, you got O-rings on each of these. If I end up rebuilding this, these will get replaced. Yellow wire, orange wire, red wire. Wire loops back around, comes up underneath here. This bracket goes here. On this bracket, we have these 2 8s that go on there. All these bolts are the same for the solenoids except for one, and it's shorter. The ground wire goes on here. Short bolt goes here. The rest of the bolts go everywhere else. Go ahead and tighten this down. All right, tighten our ground down. Tighten this bolt down, push our plate up against the valve body, tighten this down. Then we have the damper valve. Wires need to face out this direction. We have 2 bolts that hold that in. Now, on the seal on this, you just push this down past this rubber, and the rubber kind of lips around the solenoid. So if I end up replacing that, we end up building this to get replaced, but you push this down, then you can get the seal out. Alright, the ground wire comes up here on this bolt. Okay. Don't forget to change your O-ring there. Manual valve points up with the slot up, so it fits in the linkage. All right, that's it for this valve body. All right, F4A33-1. I'm going to start off in the overdrive drum, or sometimes referred to as the end clutch. You have 2 different seals, depends on which shaft you have. Mine happens to be the small. So let me go press this in. Okay, I don't know how well this is going to show up on the camera. There is a lipped side. This side faces up. There's a sealing ring back here, hook and loop. Which means it goes together just like that. You need to lube this up really, really well, because this lip is super thin and it is super easy to cut it. They really needed to redesign this drum right here, and they never did. So, let's see if you can see how well that lip shows up on there. It is super thin when you get it on there. The lip is going to face up towards you. They actually did not put this in my kit. I had to find somebody that had it. Otherwise, I'd be waiting days for this. This is a D shape on the inside here. Make sure that these little balls are rattling around. Get you some grease up in that groove, and it'll kind of help when you mush it, the lip in, it'll kind of help keep it up in there. You cannot use too much lube on this lip seal right here. See, sometimes using this lip seal tool does not work too well. Sometimes I have to use the lip wizard that sometimes comes in these kits, especially Trans-Tech kits. And let's see what we did with it. Just be really, really careful with it. Okay, I think we went down. And you got this plate goes on top. Get this ring, and we're going to have the short end of the taper of our tips of our snap ring up. Alright, then we got this washer. It's going to sit on top. Little fingers have to fit down in those grooves. This hub goes down, nothing on this side. We have our steels and our clutches, and no, I do not soak my clutches. You can soak them if you want to. I've never seen a difference doing it and not doing it. Some people get really upset about it. It's really not that big of a deal. We got this wire that goes on top of here. This is your selective to determine your clutch clearance. And then we got this bearing here. It's going to sit on here. It actually fits better on the back of the tranny, so we'll just leave that the way it is. When this shaft goes in, the short end's going to be sitting in here. Bushing inside, I recommend you replace all your bushings. Sometimes when you order a bushing kit, they tell you that they don't have it for an F4A33. You can order it for a KM175. It's the same. Okay, our front clutch has a D-shaped seal right here. Make sure your bushings are in there. There's a D-shaped seal that goes here. Make sure that these balls are loose again. Springs. Short end of the taper up again. We got a thick apply plate. See the cutout notches. We're going to keep all the notches together. Pressure plate, the rounded edge goes down. Snap ring. Okay, on our rear clutch, we have a D-shaped ring that goes there, one that goes on the inside right here. We have our bearing that's got to go in before our sealing ring. It's butt cut, just goes together like so. You can put grease in that groove if need be to hold it in there. Our thrust washer. Make sure the balls are free again. I think I said that. Our spring cage. The opening of our snap ring, we're going to keep away from that little indention right there. Short end of the taper up again. In fact, we would probably want to put this probably somewhere or like right in there. Okay, on the apply plate on the bottom, there's a recess. This wavy cushion goes in there. Put you some grease on there to hold that in place. Keep our notches together again. The rear clutches are a little bit thinner in diameter than the front clutches. The step faces up. Snap ring. Okay, if you look on this drum right here, there's a dot. On our shaft here, there's this thin O-ring, this race. The thin O-ring goes right there. This flat spot of this shaft has to line up with that dot. And then we have 3 sealing rings that go on here. They're butt cut. You put grease in the groove if you need be. I'm going to take this over and I'm going to press this into the drum. Usually it fits really tight. Every once in a while it fits kind of loose. You do want it kind of tight because when you press this down, you don't want this ring to turn. Give them a little mush down inside the groove. Okay, also forgot to mention, if you have planetary damage especially, but there's a cut plug that goes back here, you can replace this plug. If you got a planet that's damaged, you want to pull this plug out and get all the debris out of here. Run a brush down inside of there. Make sure all these holes are nice and free and blowing lots of air. Go ahead and put your front clutch on top of your rear clutch, and we'll set this off to the side. Okay, on right here is another sealing ring, hook and loop. Make sure you change your bushings. On the back here is our race. And we have a bearing here. Make sure these bushings are in really good shape. Okay, for our piston here, there's different size pistons, and most of these there are different sizes, so you're just going to pick the lip seals that fit the best for you. You got a D shape that goes in here, D shape that goes out here. On here we got 2 O-rings. On your bushing there is a feed hole right down in here. Make sure that bushing is not covering that feed hole. That's for lube. Alright, there's an apply ring that goes here, cushion ring. Make sure that you get plenty of grease on here to hold that in place, because you're going to be flipping it upside down. Be sure and lube these O-rings really well. You don't want to cut them as you're putting the support in. And when this goes into the case, we're putting the flat pressure plate down, alternating our clutches and steels up. This dished steel goes on top with the dish up. This cushion plate with the dish up is going to sit on top. Our center support's going to go on here, snap ring on top. I found it easier if you put your sun gear inside. Put this one down inside the planet and just hold your sun gear and hold it like this as you're putting it down. That's the way I do it. You do it however you want. Okay, when our planet goes inside or ring gear goes inside the case, there's no need to take all this off. If you do take it off, the snap ring here, this plate has a step to it. The step faces in. This whole thing will slide off. There's really no need to take it off. If this is screwed up, usually everything else is screwed up too. So when this goes into the case, there's a snap ring that goes on the back here. This plate sits on top. You'll see where this cutout goes. There's 40 Torx that hold that in. And then when you get it in place, you stake it right here. So those hold that in. We have a bearing on the back of our planet here. And then we have a bearing down inside. It goes in just like so. Alright, while we being a snot. And this is going to sit down inside of that. center support in, there's a bearing that sits on top. I'm sorry, this sits on top of the sun gear, and our bearing sits on top, and our race fits in the back here. And then our bearing sits on top right there. On our idler gear, this ID mark right here faces out towards you. You got two bearings. There's no crush sleeve that goes in between. This race goes in the case, tab goes in the hole, sits in there just like that. We got our lineup tab right there, and we 17mm bolt on this. We got our servo cover. There is a switch here. This metal right here. It's spring loaded. I'm not going to take it apart because I'll probably break it to measure that spring. The main thing is that make sure that this cover is working properly when it's making contact. Of course, you got continuity. When it's off, you don't. O-ring here, snap ring on the outside. There's a spring inside our little piece right here. The measurements will be on Patreon side. It's adjustable. We've got our 19mm nut out here. There's an E-clip that holds that on if you need to take it apart. Very thin O-ring here. D-ring here. Most kits now come with a D-ring that goes here. The factory is this Teflon butt cut. You can use this if you want. The D-ring rubber is much better. This cover goes on just like so. This opening has to line up with the feed ports. I'll show you when we get there. There's a snap ring that goes on the front here. Our spring that goes there. Transfer shaft, small end goes in. There is a race that goes up inside of the case for this. Of course, the selective shim is out here on this one. You can actually just pull this out and get to it. There's an O-ring here. I do recommend that you put a bead of silicone on there, 12mm that hold that in. Alright, differential. The selective shim is out here again for our preload. And alright, come on, go back down in there. O-ring here again, I would recommend that you go ahead and put a bead of silicone. They just tend to leak. Put your axle seal in, 14mm on that. This is sitting in there like so. Race goes here. This notch is going to face up. It's going to sit in there just like so. 17mm on this. Okay, this you can break really easy, but it's something that you do need to do. There is this little bitty O-ring, and it's easy to cut this. What you need to do is you need to find you something that fits in the back of your stator tube right there, down inside that. You need to support this really, really well. And then you're going to press this shaft out just enough to expose that O-ring right there. And this is how it normally comes out in little pieces, hard as a rock. This can cause you lockup issues of it not wanting to release. So put this O-ring on. Make sure that you are all the way in that groove. Lube the crap out of it. And then press this back in. Don't get radical with it because you can break this. Okay, make sure you didn't cut your O-ring. Got an O-ring on the outside here. $10mm that hold this together. My bushings have already been pressed in, so I went ahead and put my front seal in. On my front seals I use a 3M weather strip adhesive, so it's already in. Depending on what yours is what size this ball is. That one is a 218 thousandths. The outer gear goes with the dot up. The inner gear has a rubber seal. And you got to make sure and line these tabs up. Lube this up before you try to stick it in there. And then a snap ring that holds that in. Put the opening away from any of those notches. Alright, then the rubber side faces up towards you. We're going to line our passages up. Okay, I recommend that you get a Sonex pump lineup tool. Alright, we're not wanting to line up. Okay, so we're not going to be able to use it on this one. Since we can't use it on this one, we're going to use our torque converter. Alright, put our ring on here, and since it's not the right size, we'll just hold it by hand. Line up our holes. Alright, 95 inch-pounds. Washer, selective selective washer. Goes on here. O-ring. Our sealing rings go together just like so. Open them up just enough to get them on there. Kind of mush them in there. Okay, our bolts have these rubber washers that go on them, and we are waiting on one low reverse clutch to show up. I got another tranny I got to tear down, so we got a gasket that does go on here. Okay, I'll be back when I get the rest of my parts. Alright, we're going to see how much we can get done. Still waiting on a couple clutches. Gonna have to take this 12 out here, these 3 12s out right here, and then this 12 right here. Then our linkage will come out. We can change the O-ring that's on there. There's no need to take the park ball out of here. It's got the spring on there. If you do end up taking it out, the spring lays down on here, loops on the back side of here, and you take it out. Taking this out right here, you want to make sure you put some silicone around that. They use some kind of white sealant. It's very stout. The washer on the back of this, it has a tip on it that goes into right here, holds that. I'm changing this O-ring right here. Go ahead and change this one up here also. This one up here you can get to without taking this apart. The only thing that's down inside of here in the case is 2 bearings, one on each end. Lube up our O-ring so we don't cut it when we go in. Make sure our detent's on the outside of this. Park ball goes underneath. And the rod here. And let's go ahead and get our little stopper in here so it'll keep from pushing it up. you can't back up on there. And don't think we're sitting in quite right. Let me get this to where I can work on it. Okay. Got a little shoulder on that, make sure it fits down around there properly. Make sure this sits down on there properly. Okay, these bolts right here are, what's the bear set this, huh? I believe 18 foot-pounds. The rest of this is 95 inch-pounds. Okay. And we're going to slide our planetary in this hole. Not our planetary, our ring gear. We want the snap ring groove facing out towards us. Put our snap ring on. You can put the plate on now if you want to. I just wait till later. Okay, let me change camera angles. Okay, we got our planetary, the bearing here, our sprags in. Okay, this is where we're going to get stopped. This is our ply plate, or pressure plate, I'm sorry, clutches. There's two different size clutches for this, and that's where my problem lies. They keep sending me the small ones. They shorted me one from the kit, and then they keep sending me the small ones. So I have no idea when my last clutch is going to get here. Really frustrating to be short one clutch, holding up an entire job. Okay, so we got one clutch to put on, then our pressure plate. This side's going to go up. Then our cushion plate's going to go on top of that. So we're at a standstill until our clutch shows up. Okay, those clutches, I got the last two in the country. Apparently they've been discontinued. These are 54 teeth on mine. So I don't know what anybody else is going to do down the line. So put your sun gear on with your bearing on. You got two feed ports. One's right there. One's right there. That's where those two O-rings have to go. We got our race in the back of our sun gear, our wavy ring on our support, our two O-rings. Turn your planet clockwise. Alright, we're all the way down. Now it does not specify which way the snap ring goes as far as the opening. I would get used to putting these KM units with the opening at the 12 o'clock because the early units, there was a speed sensor that came in here, and if you put the snap ring over here, the speed sensor would push the snap ring off. So just go ahead and put it at the 12 o'clock or somewhere close to that. The odds of you getting to do a KM 175 or anything like that are probably pretty slim. But if you're just in the habit of doing that, you won't have to worry about it. Try to keep from hitting the camera. Let me move this away from the camera. Alright, put your band in. Let's see, where are we at? Arrow right there, faces up towards you. Our sun shell. Doesn't feel like it's quite all the way down. Band getting a little hung up there for some reason. Okay, our bearing, hub with the race and the bearing. Cord and direct drum. We got our sealing ring, our bearing, and our washer in there. And I'm going to have to move this over to where there's a hole in the table because this shaft is going to poke through. Not going to be able to put the camera over there. So once I get the drum down, our gasket's going to go on here. I'm going to lube up the case, lube up the pump. Got our washer, sealing rings, and race. Our bolts with our washers on them. And we torque these down to 16 foot-pounds. Okay, in our servo there's these feed ports here. Cutout has to line up with that. Okay, I don't know how well I'm going to be able to do this over here. I may have to move it, and if I can't get it to go up in there like I want it to, I'm going to use a kind of like a C-clamp, woodworking clamp, to come in here and push this in. Alright, it's being pretty tight, so put this up into there. Let's see if we can grab onto this thing.
Did you go try to talk to him about this training?
What training?
The one for this Mitsubishi?
Who?
I'm Mario, see if you think you don't have parts for it. I thought you were finishing it up.
I'm just gonna have to use that old clutch.
God damn it. They didn't send you the right clutch?
Now they're telling me they're discontinued. Okay, I can't turn tranny up to where you'll see it, but there's a square part on this servo pin. Just tighten it down till you can't turn it anymore, then count about 2 turns. We'll see where it ends up at 2 turns. So we got 1, 2. Okay, I think we shall go 2.5. Okay, I think we'll leave it right there. Alright, 7/8 on the nut. You're gonna have to find a way to hold that still while you tighten it. Alright, and then your servo cover, put your connector facing up towards the top of the tranny, not up right now. Go ahead and lube this up. Alright. Then we have this little valve, has an O-ring on it. This end faces out. Make sure that puck is in there.
Ready for that piece of shit?
No, let's waste more time. Stick it over there.
You put a goddamn transmission cooler fitting with the C-clip on it, on the back of the fucking pump, real fucking deep on it. I'm gonna fucking break that piece of shit. I saw it, but I thought I was following the line for the auto stop pump. Oh, that's the fucking auto stop pump. And I'm still feeling some retention on it. And I looked on there and it was like the one for the fucking transmission. But the one on the other side, it has the nut on it and the little hole on it to stick the fucking holes. The cooler line is real fucking easy to get to, but the other one,
Okay, this goes in just like so. There's an O-ring on the end of this. This is 21 foot-pounds, and it's 8mm Allen. Okay. Okay. And we could do our valve body now. But I want to be able to air check my end clutch. So I'm going to wait on that. Our low reverse brake, front and rear clutch, servo apply, servo release. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this over and we'll do our end clutch. Okay, we got our race. The little notch is right here. Set this over here. Go ahead and lube up our bearings. Okay, this ID mark faces out towards us. The notch is going to face in here. Let me get this back where I can look at it. Turned a little bit. "28 foot-pounds on this, 17 millimeter. Hands are a little greasy. Alright, we're turning. Now we got to bend our tabs up. Alright, our plate. With our notch sitting over here. 40 torques on here. $15 foot-pounds on these. Alright, stake these in place and move this out the way. Alright, the long spline of our shaft is going in. Our bearing is sitting on top. Our drum. We have a bearing that goes down inside of here. If your rubber will not stay in here, put some grease in the groove and it'll help keep it in. Alright, going to have to. £95" on this, 95" on the side cover. A lot of your kits will give you this cork gasket. They give you the corked one. You might want to think about doing away with this and just doing silicone. I use a good grade of black. Okay, the little wire ties go to the top. 10 millimeters. Alright, before I go torquing this down, I'm going to go ahead and air check it. Sounds good. Okay, we can go ahead and grease up our bearings for our shaft. Okay, you can grease up right here. Try not to get it out here. I wouldn't try to grease your O-ring. Hope that But this does enough. They leak pretty much anyway, so I put silicone, a very thin bead of silicone out here on the edge. 12 millimeters for that. Go ahead and put your little silicone around that. Alright, 18 foot-pounds on the bolts. Only lines up one way, and you see where the area was at before on that silicone. Okay, I think I'm just going to leave it like this so you can kind of see. Our race on our diff. Our retainer with this notch facing out. Here again, put some grease around here. Try not to get on the surface where you're going to put the silicone. Put you a thin bead of silicone around there. Alright, the wide slot at the top, narrow at the bottom. "26 foot-pounds on these, 14 millimeters on the 17s down here, 51 foot-pounds. Alright, two different ones. You got cork, you got rubber. Here again, you're going to want to put a little bit of grease in the groove to hold the rubber in. Alright, 89 inch-pounds on here again. Okay, battery died, and the battery liked to become one with my camera. I almost was unable to get it out of there. It kind of like melted into it. So I'm definitely gonna have to get another battery. Even though you replaced the O-ring, go ahead and silicone this. It's your temp sensor. Even though you put an O-ring on here, you might want to silicone this also. And then when we put our valve body on, the manual valve, the slot has to line up on here. We do need to change our O-ring back here. Make sure that this tube is in there. It's either in here or it's in the case right here. And let me silicone this. Actually, and let's go ahead and do it. Could probably do this after we get it in there. Flat spot is going to be facing over here towards the rear. Okay, our temp sensor has to clip into this bracket right here. The little tip of that right there is going to fit in that hole. It's going to sit right there. Let's see. This little clip right here. That's going to sit right there. Actually, I think I got get the wrong harness in it. Trying to remember, it's been so long. $10 millimeter. Little short 10 over here. The longest 10 goes right there. And then the rest of these are pretty much the same. .89 inch-pounds on this again. Alright, our filter, and this filter is a little different than the one that comes in there, so I'm probably going to have to find different filter bolts, but that's the originals. As long as it's shaped the same, we'll be okay. And the pickup is in the same spot. This is what the original looks like. It's much thicker. So I gotta find me filter bolts for that. Our gasket's going to go on here. Pan's gonna go on. 89 inch-pounds again. And once I get that, I'll have the tranny flipped up. Okay, on your speed sensors, the black tracer goes up here. It'll be green with a black stripe. The green ones go over here. O-ring on each one. $10mm bolts on each one of those. wires in the bracket. This bracket goes on this bolt here. Okay, when you put it back in, do not mix up the two connectors. They will plug into each other. It will not work. On the earlier units, it was much easier to mix them up because they were closer together. Okay, I guess the only thing we got left now is the filler tube. $12mm on that. That's the right one. Okay, even though you're changing the O-ring, go ahead and put you some silicone on it. If you want to torque this down, you can torque it down. I just tighten it down. 18 foot-pounds if you want to torque it. Put a little dab on our O-ring for our neutral switch. There's a little hole in the neutral switch where you can line it up before you tighten it down. There are speedometer seals for your speed sensor that goes in. Let's see if we can get this into here. My R&R guys will do it. This is one of the seals, and I believe that's the O-ring for it. So we are done with this unit, and we'll catch you on the next one.